This is my grow tent. I have several tanks in hydroponics using Kratky, which means that you have the plants, there's no soil, and the roots are directly touching the reservoir, which is the liquid with the nutrients. So you can think of nutrients like fertilizer. And let's look at this. So here you can see the roots. Healthy roots typically are white. These are a little bit brown because the plants have been through a lot, and there were also some of them have been outside and had to transplant them from soil to hydro, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, the way the Kratky system works is, for example here, let's say we're growing lettuce, and initially you have the tank almost full. There needs to be some air for the roots to breathe, for the plant to breathe. And over time, for example, if it's indoors, you have it with artificial light. If it's outside, then the sun. The plant will start drinking the water to the point that the level of the reservoir will decrease. So the water mixed in with the nutrients of fertilizer will lower itself. And for the lifespan of a lettuce, by the time the tank is down, you harvest it and then restart the whole system again. You might be asking yourself, what type of fertilizer am I using? I've used both dry and liquid fertilizer. If you're starting out, this is probably easier, liquid. Just need the measuring cups. So you can take, for example, here you have let's say you're in the pre-flowering stage, you would take this many milliliters of the grow bottle and this many milliliters of the bloom. Once you're mixing fertilizer, you want to have a pH and an EC meter, because otherwise you're flying blind. At least the first couple of times you want to know how your water reacts, because like water typically in different places you have soft water, you have hard water, you have water with more electric conductivity than others, or different pH levels. So you at least, let's say the first 10 times, you need to know what you're dealing with. And for that, you need measuring tools, as in a pH meter and an EC meter. Typically, I think a normal quality tier pH meter could cost you maybe $60, and EC meter around 30 or so. You can get super fancy, but just something basic that can do the job will work. So again, you can use liquid. You will find it typically at grow shops. And dry fertilizer, this in the US I think is readily available, and in Europe there are some wholesalers. So if you want to buy, they will sell it to you. I have another video on what is better, dry or... In the case of my peppers, this level of nutrients will decrease over time. And if it gets all the way to the bottom, the plant will die. So what I'm doing is I'm topping it up, essentially. So I mix a new batch of nutrients and I add it on top of this. So essentially what you want, once the plant is on an advanced stage, is that you want to keep your, let's say bottom, let's say this is a 60-liter tank. You want the bottom 20 liters to be pretty level. So don't change a lot. I would say once a week, especially when the plant is producing a lot of pods, a lot of peppers, you want it to keep an eye on it, because if it dries too much and all these roots convert to air roots, the air roots are the white ones. And if you cover them, you will either slow down the plant a lot, so you see it's not doing very well, or you would downright kill it and drown it. So you don't ever want to cover the top roots. So at least there have to be some air roots that can breathe air. Otherwise the plant will die. It cannot live underwater. It needs to have some type of oxygen feeding into the roots. So again, this level will decrease over time. If it gets too low, if it empties, the plant will die. So what I do is you keep an eye on it, especially when it's really producing a lot of peppers, every few days or every week, just like regular plants that you water, instead of just regular water with nutrients mixed in. And I will have a separate video where I'll answer the question, okay, what happens, let's say, for example, this tank a few days ago, it had a very low concentration of nutrients. What do I do if I want to increase it a lot? Let's say the plant is producing incredibly well, and you when you initially filled up the tank, it was, let's say, an easy electric conductivity of 2, and now if you measure it, it's 1.2. How can you increase the electric conductivity to 2 again when it's that low and you can only add very little volume of nutrient solution? That's something I'll answer in the next video. It's a bit more complicated. It's a minimum amount of math, but you can definitely, it's totally doable. A bit of a caveat, this is not the Kratky method anymore. This is more akin to the Dutch bucket system. It looks a bit complicated the first time you look at it, but essentially you have all the nutrients, a tank here, there's a pump that pumps water up this irrigation line. So it's essentially automatically watering the plants. You have a neutral, sterile medium. It looks here like it's perlite, for example. And then the buckets are filled up to under this outlet. So there's like a very little, a few centimeters of depth that are full of water. And then the plants, typically the roots, are in here. And any excess of that gets out in the drain line. So that's essentially the same that I'm doing here. So I have a tank that empties over time. And instead of having something like this, where if you reach a certain level, it goes out and something watering on top, I am taking the position or the role of the water pump. So me manually, I'm irrigating, I'm watering the plants, and then the plant is drinking it. And that's pretty much it. It's the same thing. This is more efficient in the sense that it's automated, so you don't have to manually do anything. This scales up very well. So if you have a huge farm or a huge setup, this, I think, is way more efficient way of doing things. But if you just have like a grow tent and you're just playing with things and you're experimenting, I think this is fine. This is perfectly fine. And at least the plants survive and they produce. Maybe it's not the optimum way of doing things, but you gotta get started somewhere. So that's it. I hope you have enjoyed this walkthrough of the Kratky hydroponic system. Always remember never to drown the air roots. So it's gonna be water roots and then air roots. Please never drown the air roots because your plant will die. So let's say you're growing peppers and it gets to a point where you're really advanced, only refill the bottom third of the tank. Otherwise, you might drown the plants and the air roots. So, and white roots like this are good. When they start getting like darker brown, stuff like that, something's not going so hot. All right, fire down your questions below. Happy to help. Take care and have a good one. Bye-bye.